Welcome to Item 360 101. You have myself, Melody. I'm going to be pitching all of the questions to Allie's Way. She is our lead content coordinator here at SupplyPike, so she creates all of this amazing content for you guys. All the decks, all the articles, all the ebooks, it's her and her team that create that for you guys. And she brings experience over from Clorox, and just really excited to have her here today to talk about Item 360. Awesome. So our agenda for today, we're going to cover the basics of what Item 360 is, how to navigate it, how to set up new items, and then how to edit those items and maintenance. So a lot of stuff that we're going to be trying to pack in an hour's worth of content. But at the end, we are going to have a Q&A with Allie just to answer some of the questions that you guys submit. I know that there was a few that were submitted early, so we'll make sure that we cover those. Awesome. FAQs. So will we get a slide deck, a copy of the slide deck? Yes, you will. So don't feel like you have to screenshot anything. Don't feel like you have to write a lot down. We will send you both the slide deck and the recording in your inbox in 3 to 4 business days. So keep an eye out for that there. What is the best way to ask a question? So down on the bottom, you're going to see 2 little bubbles, one that says the 2 bubbles and it says Q&A on it. That's going to be the easiest way for us actually to see your question and answer it and for me to pitch it Allie's way. The chat, as you guys have kind of seen, the chat's been pretty active today. That's the best way to engage with the entire group and share helpful information. And yes, Abraham, we will be sending a recording of today's webinar to your inbox. So you'll get both that and the slide deck. Usually takes us about 3 to 4 business days. Sometimes we're a little bit quicker than that, but yeah, you should see it then. Awesome. Okay, who is SupplyPike? So for those of you who don't know, we are SupplyPike. We're part of that company, and we are a software company that helps CPGs reduce the amount of revenue loss that they're experiencing, either through prevention of detecting, root causes and helping you fix that, as well as actually helping with the resolving and the dispute process that comes along with revenue loss. So think deductions, chargebacks, fines, fees, all of that stuff. We help automate that process to actually go and win your money back. So one of our favorite sayings is we help you get paid and get better. We're trusted by over 500 different CPGs, and we're representing over $50 billion in retail impacts, basically across all of the product categories. So you can see some of our customers down here at the bottom. One thing that we always like to say is, if you haven't joined this list already, we would love to add you to it. So yeah, that's our spiel. That's it. We'll go ahead and hand it off to Allie. You ready to talk about Item 360?
I'm ready to talk about Item 360. I'd love to talk more about Disney characters, but we'll focus on Item 360. So welcome, everyone. Excited to get into today's content. We're going to be talking about Item 360, like we've said, but I did want to kind of level set. This is Item 360 101. So we're going to be focusing on more of the basics. You may be new to Walmart, working in as a supplier, or you may have not used Item 360 because your products before did not fall in the realm of that item setup. There's maybe a different process. So this is really going to be a basic level. I will say, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more high level, I can point you to a resource we have now. So there is, if you type on Supplier Wiki, I believe the title is Understanding Item 360 with Dee Dee Washburn. She was one of our guests, and this is really one of the things she does a lot of work on with suppliers, and she was gracious enough to join us for an hour and kind of talk through some of those things. So if you're looking for a more in-depth course, I would point you to that resource that we have. And then just a sneak preview, we are working on an Item 360 201 deck. So if you're looking for something a little bit more advanced, I would point you in those 2 directions. Otherwise, welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of Item 360 and how to understand this Walmart application. So let's answer the first question. What is Item 360? Essentially, Item 360 is Walmart's platform. It's relatively new in the space of Walmart applications, and it's designed for suppliers to be able to create and update all of the items that are sold in stores and on Walmart.com. And Walmart has now, before it was not integrated, I believe it was just the store portion, but now is both store and online systems, kind of as a one-stop shop for item management. So trying to streamline this application and make it, uniform and unified for both omni channels. I will say here, we're probably going to talk about this a couple different times during today's presentation. Item 360, we've seen a lot of updates recently. We are going to cover some of those. I would say if you want to drop the update that was in your category, you can go ahead and do that. We will be talking about some of those high level, but if you need to kind of search your emails to find that, or just kind of double check, I would drop that in the chat, because I know that there have been a couple different changes on item 360 and we may not be covering all of those today. All right, so what is item 360 used for? Essentially, if you were to sum it up in one phrase, it would be item setup and maintenance. But essentially, the foundation of the shipping process is going to be item setup. So making sure that your item, let's say it's a water bottle, has the correct DTIN, has the correct shipping size, has all the details that make sure that the product description for customers is correct, and that it has all the information that would need to be attached to it through the planning process, through production, through transportation, and then consumer information and accessibility. So it really outlines all the information needed attached to that one product in the supply chain process. And then I really like an analogy, because sometimes it feels a little bit nebulous when you have all of these different applications and they have fancy names and what do they do. But essentially, if you're a new supplier, I would remember kind of the idea of a library book. So we have the Dewey Decimal System at libraries, probably a little bit more advanced now. But essentially, if you were to file a library book incorrectly, let's say you filed it under the wrong title, or it's the wrong edition, or even the wrong cover image if you were looking up on your library's website, no one would be able to know what it is, or where it is, or how to access it. So the same thing applies to your products at Walmart, whether they're online or in store. If someone can't find it that wants it, and the information is not matching up what is supposed to be correct, it'll just sit on the shelf. And if product sits on the shelf, we all know what that means. So it's very key that your products are set up correctly, because it's going to help mitigate any issues in the supply chain process, any issues with your sales forecasting. And it's really just the foundation of your product. At SupplyPike, we focus a lot on helping reduce revenue loss, especially when it comes to OTIF fines, to deductions, to SQUEP fines. And one of the key places that suppliers miss is not having their items set up correctly. So I'll be harping on that a couple more times and give some more specific examples. But it is really key to remember that if that library book can't be found, no one's going to check it out. And it may even not make it to the library, again, because it's filed under the wrong title or cover image, etc. So just a little analogy to keep in mind. Okay, so here are some of the high level functions of item 360. Like I said, if you had to sum it up, it would be item setup and maintenance. But here's some of the specifics when you get into both of those things. So you can actually set up new products or shippers. It has a full catalog of your brand assortment, so you can kind of view what's available or what's created at this point. You can maintain items. You can edit product details. Other things you can do is correct information that may be dated or is incorrect. You can also update images, videos, other rich media. This is going to be more specific to your Walmart.com business. And then you can also execute product strategy for omni-channel, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, so what is not yet supported on item 360? I will say that the way that item 360 has been updated recently, this is something that I would go back and check. If you're today doing import apparel, I would not say that it is a hard and fast rule that item 360 will never support import apparel. From the way it's trending, and again, this is more just observation, not anything set in stone, we're seeing that more suppliers are getting integrated into item 360. So if for some, I would always just check your supplier communication. If you're seeing that your current process is either down or is not working properly, because there are going to be some legacy workflows or systems that are staying around for a little bit, similar to settlement if you were on that program. they're going to keep it for a period to get people to transition off. But we recommend with the suppliers that we're working with, it makes the most sense for you to start investing in the new process so that when it's gone, you're not, pulling your head out of the sand and adjusting to that. So currently what we have seen that is not supported by item 360. And again, if you've seen something different, let us know in the chat. That's going to be assortments, your import shippers, import apparel, store apparel, pharmacy, and then just general fees. So those are some of the things that are not going to be supported in item 360. And then, like I said, we've got some updates. The one that we captured recently was that Walmart recently announced that they're making changes to the e-commerce item setup process. So this isn't necessarily adding anyone in addition onto item 360, but there's actually going to be a new file in item 360 for cost changes. And what we observed is this is mainly going to impact home and hardline departments. And then just generally, if you want more information, you probably got an email if you are in those categories on supplier communication. And if not, I would go ahead and reach out to the contact there. I'm sure we can find that later. If you did receive this, I know another one that some suppliers received, and I'm just checking my notes, was one specifically for automotive suppliers. And that's going to be based on just that same one. So it's the same as essentially the same file for cost changes. It's going to also impact automotive. So again, you can find some of these articles listed in item 360. That's actually available if you go into item 360, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. But I would make sure that you do have that supplier communication, because that is how key updates are communicated to suppliers, especially with these app updates. All right. And then let me click through to the next slide. Now we're going to kind of jump into how you actually navigate item 360. So we talked about what it is, what it does, what item 360 does not support. And now we're going to talk about how you actually navigate the application. So very simple. Basically, if you are accessing item 360, you'll go into Retail Link, you'll go into apps, and you'll go into item 360. And then here we have the picture. So let's say you've logged in, you've gone through your two-factor authentication, you're in Retail Link. This is kind of what your homepage looks like. You'll go into apps, and you can actually type into the search bar item 360. I would say if you are seeing any issues, make sure that you have this critical space between item and 360. If you type anything into a Walmart search, Retail Link search, it needs to be pretty exact to what the actual application is called, or you may, find that nothing has shown up. And then if you want, and you're accessing item 360 fairly often, you can always star that application and it will appear here in this apps column. So you can see for this like dummy account, we have, an appointment scheduler, we have Fixit, OTIF, Nova, SQEP. You could put item 360 in here as well. All right, so let's say you log into item 360. This is kind of what it would look like. You would jump in and you would see, some news and announcements, these critical action items, activity manager. Just to note, like I said, item 360, we've seen more updates to processes and more attention to, feedback in the help area. So if there are changes to this, you can always shout those out here if you want to, share a tip with a fellow supplier. So like I said, this is just kind of the general navigation, how you move through item 360, knowing where things are. So here you've got the home button. This will always take you back to this particular page, which can be helpful if you're deep in the weeds in the catalog or your activity manager. Then you can move down this navigation bar, and this is the activity manager. So this is where you can actually find and learn more about your submissions. And you can search by different filters that may be like activity ID, when you submitted a specific item, the type. And this is really just going to show all of your submissions within the supplier action with the supplier action required status. So this means you would probably need to go in and edit something. You can also kind of see that here. So this bar is kind of built out. And you can even see it says like 22 submissions require your attention. This is where I would start. If you were just logging into Retail Link and going into item 360, this is going to be an actionable place where you might see, you know, why a product's not showing up or why something's incorrect. This is where I would start. And then third down here is this catalog, and this allows you to view all the published and unpublished products within your catalog. So anything that's been, you know, built out here, you can have it here. This is helpful too, especially if you are publishing a product and then, you know, Walmart's no longer carrying it. You don't have to delete the product from item 360, but you can not have it as something that is available. And then vice versa. If, you know, let's say it's a seasonal item and Walmart wants your trick or treat bags, you can relist those and make those available. And then lastly is second to last is setup. You can use this for setting up single products, shippers, some assortments, e-delivery items. Every detail about your product will be documented here. And that's where you'll actually do that action of documenting your product. And then lastly, we have the maintenance. This is where you can actually update product information, make changes suggested by the title and description insights, or changes you need to make for incorrect information. And we'll talk about that process towards the end of today's presentation. And then the last but not least, I know I said maintenance was last, but I always forget about upload down here. And perfect little reminder, don't overlook this because this is actually for uploading your documents. If you remember a couple slides back, I mentioned the cost change spreadsheet for some of the departments. This is where you may upload this. So we'll show you that process and when you'll actually use that button, but you don't want to forget about it because it is really helpful. And then we'll just kind of go through some of these home area items. So you've got your critical action items. Those are also going to be kind of pointed out here. This is going to take you directly to that activity manager. So you can actually access the activity manager in a couple different ways. Here in this critical action items, and then activity manager here. And it's going to be filtered on the activity IDs that have errors. So this is, you can go into activity manager and it might show you a longer list. This is where I would start specifically if you want to go correct anything with errors. And then if you click over to the title and description insights, this is more helpful suggestions. It's actually automated insights and recommendations that help improve the quality of your product name, key features, site description. This again is going to be a little bit more for your Walmart.com. Again, still very important with omnichannel and the way that we've seen, shopper insights with consumers looking at their phones and then going into the store and maybe buying it or vice versa. This is really key for the research phase. So wanting to have those correctly updated, Walmart's built out this tool that kind of helps suppliers make the best changes. So consumers are accessing their products. And then these are really just suggestions. Like I said, they're not errors, but they may help improve either how you're listed in the Walmart application on Walmart.com. It can help with a couple other things, but if you had to pick something to work on, the most important thing would be that errors in Activity Manager. And then just some kind of helpful things is this news and announcements. So this is going to be there for any updates on Item 360 features. You still will get your supplier communication, but if you're not accessing the app regularly, I would opt for the emails, and we can show you how to set that up. But for any just regular news, this is a great place to click into, and it'll actually take you to the help articles that are listed for Item 360. If you do want to access any of the other help articles, you can go here into this help, and then it will pop down. You can actually open up the help doc site. During the Q&A, I have a feeling I'll probably point people to that help section, because that has been honestly a saving grace for a lot of suppliers we work with. When it comes to Item 360, there's a lot of helpful information in there. And then other things in this top navigation is just you can share feedback. If there's an error or something's wrong or the application is not working, you can do that here, or you can do a quick search with the attribute finder. All right, so that was pretty quick, hopefully helpful. And now we're going to get into the first part of Item 360 in terms of what you can actually action in the application, and that is setting up new items. So the first things first, when it comes to setting up new items, we get this question a lot. What is a GTIN? What is a sellable GTIN? And what is a consumable GTIN? There's lots of different names for it, but essentially a GTIN is going to be a 14-digit number that is uniquely identifying an item at a company defined by the GS1. So it's going to be a string of numbers associated with a barcode. There's a couple different GTINs that make this a little bit confusing. So you might see like a GTIN 13. That's going to be your European UPC. You may see, I believe it's 12 digits for the UPC is the GTIN. So there's a help article in Retail Link, and I can even send that here because that's probably going to be one of our most asked questions. You do have to be logged into Retail Link to access this, but essentially this will help you kind of understand GTNs more specifically. I know we'll get some questions about that, so I can always paste that into the chat, and we can talk through that more if people have questions. But this is straight from Retail Link. If you have access to that, you'll be able to see that. And then with a GTN, when would that need to change? So that's another huge question we get when people are asking about Item 360. A couple of the options, I won't say this is an exhaustive list, but more of the common ones is a consumer or a trading partner is supposed to easily see a change on a new product from a current product. You may hear in the supplier world a hard change versus a soft change. So if it's a hard change, it makes sense to change the GTIN. A new consumer or trading partner has a disclosure requirement. Oh no. Thanks, Melanie. I see that my video is gone for a second. Apologies, guys. There's an impact. Again, we're talking about when a GTIN would change, an impact on how the product is shipped, stored, or received. So let's say you're transitioning from DSD to DSV or import to direct ship, whatever that may be, you would change that in Item 360. And then another reason would be change of pack quantity. So these are key reasons. And if right now, you'll get this deck later, so you don't have to take notes. But if you're thinking of a product that you're going, oh, we are definitely changing the pack quantity, or we're definitely doing a hard change in the new year on this product, that may be a great time to just kind of note that and make sure that you're not, that you're proactive with these changes, and that is not resulting in any deductions, OTIF fines, anything that can happen that can create errors and ultimately money off of your invoice when it comes to Item 360 setup. All right, let's talk about how you actually action this item setup. So we kind of are back to our navigation like we were before, and you go down to setup. You'll click that and it will take you to the screen where it will ask you to select, is it a shipper or an item? For today's presentation, we'll just pretend we're setting up an item. You'll click into that and it will actually take you to a quick survey about your item. So essentially it's just asking for some information so it can start to build out the process based on what is needed. So you'll need to provide a GTIN for each consumable item that is being set up. And then Item 360 is going to build you a custom spreadsheet for your items based on your answers. from there, I'll show you what that will look like, but essentially we're going to fill that out and then we're going to upload it and it should all sync up correctly. So this is kind of what the item setup questionnaire looks like. So based on these, your spreadsheet will be set up. For today's presentation, we'll just pretend, yes, this item is going to be sold in stores. We are going to be shipping this to a DC. You'll select the supplier name. So if you have different BUs under your one business, you may select that here, or the ID and contract numbers. This is going to be pointed more to your supplier agreement. If you have questions on your supplier agreement, we do have a webinar that covers that. I'm sure Melody can send that in the chat. And then you can check this box if you want to include new publications, and if you're setting up items synced with a GDSN. And it will, once you filled out that page, it'll take you to the next page, and you can actually select, I think it says it right here, a maximum of 10 categories or 20 product types in a single spreadsheet. So you can kind of fill those out. We'll pretend like we're filling them out for bakery, and then it makes sense for it to be in like baking mixes or something like that. So you would click those, maybe click a couple of different ones depending on how you're setting that up. And then you will get your spreadsheet, and there's about 100 attributes you can assign your product in Item 360. And I've listed some of these out here, and these are going to be some of those that make the most sense to probably include. But again, usually spreadsheets kind of build out what's supposed to be included, and then they'll also do optional as well. So it just depends on your spreadsheet and how that's built out for you. All right, and then when it comes to omni-channel setup, this is something that Item 360 allows you to do. And you just go through the same process that we kind of went. This is the summarized version, answer a few questions, download the custom setup spreadsheet, populated with any available info that it's pulled. Then you'll just need to fill out the information that needs to be included and upload that. And the next step would be that you can track that status of your item setup in Activity Manager. All right, so now we're in editing items and maintenance. We've already set up an item. We've talked about what Item 360 is. Now you have a successful catalog. However, you want to change something on your item, and we're going to show you how to do that now. All right, so we're back to our home screen again, and we're going to go into Activity Manager. This is the best way to view those updates and products. So let's say, you're just doing some general maintenance. You don't have anything in mind. You'll probably go into Activity Manager and see what needs to be updated, but you can also go into maintenance, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Perfect. I got ahead of myself. This is the best way to view and take action on errors. And then this is the best way to view and update products. And then you've also got, Walmart suggestions for improvement, which I'll show some examples of here in a second. All right, we're on the Activity Manager. So similar to some of the other Walmart trackers or scorecards, if you're familiar with those, you can keep track with your submissions that need supplier action and can receive any updates from Walmart's side here. So if you've been in APDP, this is the one it reminds me of the most. You'll kind of see buckets like this pretty similar. So you've got all your submissions. You've got the ones that are labeled supplier action required. Supplier action, if you ever see that in a Walmart application, that's their language to say, hey, we've reviewed this. There's something that you as a supplier needs to do for this to be moved on to the next phase. So that's the one I would say, if you had to pick one to focus on, I would highlight that one in your mind. And then here's the Walmart action required. This means that as a supplier, there's nothing that you need to be doing on this. It's actually in Walmart's court to do the action that's required, whatever that may be, for it to move to completed. And they can toggle between these depending on what's required. But how I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but unlike APDP, if it's an APDP and you don't take action, it's not going to move back to all submissions. It should just sit here because there's not necessarily any timing requirement for item 360 submissions. And then lastly, we have our completed section. So those are ones that should be good to go and should be in your activity manager, should be listed in your catalog, and you can go in and correct those. But there's nothing that Walmart is saying that there's a glaring error on that you need to go in and correct. All right. Here's the fun part of today's conversation. Like we said very early in today's presentation, we work with about 500 plus suppliers, and we do see some errors that create, a deduction on your invoice, that create OTIF fines, that create SQUEB fines, that show up again in post audits. And these are the ones that we see the most that are attributed to incorrect item setup or unchecked item maintenance. And we'll kind of run through these. If anyone wants to, say that's definitely been an issue for us, or, oh, I have a different one, please drop that in the chat. We're always wanting to learn from each other, but these are the ones we've seen the most with the suppliers that we've worked with or had conversations with. So number one is invalid. These aren't necessarily listed as, the most to the least. This is just kind of the general top list. So the first one there is invalid image URL. I think it's been really difficult, especially with, it doesn't matter if you're a new supplier or you're, a legacy brand, invalid image URL, some of that item setup when it comes to your omni-channel, more on the .com side has been tricky. I think that's kind of where Walmart's come in and added that. I believe it's title and description insights. So that might be one that's popped up in your critical items to manage. Another one is just missing required fields. The frustrating part about item 360 is some things are supposed to be labeled as required, but they don't pop up as that always. I remember from Dee Dee actually spoke on this in the event we did with her. She spoke to some of the more like details on missing required fields and how to mitigate those. So I would go and check that out. The third common error is the item with the same GTIN exists in a different department. Another one here is exceeding character limit, which is just kind of silly. Walmart does list, max characters. So a tip there that we've seen a lot of suppliers, pretty table stakes, pretty common or basic, but it's actually just writing all of your character limits in a Google Doc and then, just highlighting them and saying, what's the word count here? Okay, it's 150 characters. Perfect. Let's throw that in. GDSN locked fields is another one. Incorrect product identifier, and then just system errors. So there can be issues if you're using something like One World Sync, that it's not syncing correctly there, but it looks correct in item 360 or vice versa. I would say reach out to the One World Sync team for any of those types of errors if it's coming from the One World Sync side, but you can also use the help docs in item 360. Those have actually been built out really well. They can kind of help you troubleshoot. And we'll talk about some of the troubleshooting towards the end as well. So like I said, we would mention some of the item 360 suggestions. I'll kind of click back to show you where those come from. So if you clicked into title, description, and insights, you would see some of these different suggestions. And we'll kind of go through these together. I think this is one that we've seen a lot of suppliers struggle with just because it's relatively new, and it can impact the business in a way that's not necessarily as critical as, the errors in Activity Manager that you see here. This title and description insights is a little bit secondary, but still very important to making sure your .com business is healthy. So essentially, in the application, you'll see kind of a list of the different suggestions. You'll click into it. Then Walmart will list, this is what is missing. This is kind of what is required. And you can, you'll see the item it's attached to, and then you'll see, missing key attributes, and you'll need to see like what key attributes are missing. And they've kind of listed some things here, and it'll even point out, that this title is 27 characters, where it should be closer to 60 for top performing items. And then they'll give you really specific, some of the descriptions here for suggestions are really specific, like trying to make it longer. So that may be something that someone on your team, if you've kind of handled, your product maintenance looks good, your item setup, everything looks correct, this is something I would go after and start to kind of update these to make your products listed go from good to great based on Walmart suggestions. Another one here for site description. You'll see, here's the definition, the requirements. And what's missing here is that the supplier that listed this, the description is either empty or doesn't contain any meaningful words. So that's something to update. I think this one, the minimum length is just one word. You can go, up to, 100,000 characters. So there's a lot of room here. And there are, so this is not a service that SupplyPike offers, but there are others that help with, some of this omni-channel and Walmart.com building out your site. You can always, bring in a third party to help with that. And then another example that we have here is just key features. So again, you can see the data type, you can see the minimum data length, max characters, required number of entries, and then it'll point out what your actual post or your key features does not include. And you can do that on Walmart.com, so you can see that in the real life example and what's missing. And then you can see here, there's not enough bullet points. So there's an expectation to have 3 or more. So including some key features, and then recommending that you include product net content quality, some other information, having a short description and a long description. So really helpful. Makes sense that Walmart's investing in this, especially as they're competing against Amazon. All right, so here's a quick overview of some of those maintenance capabilities. We are going to get into the action of this here in a second. So some of the things you can do in item maintenance is update those product content and status. You can upload images for multiple items. You can upload rich media like videos. You can do some of the cost change scenarios. This is probably going to be changing with the update that's coming on the cost change template sheet. And then item configuration and supply chain details are some of the other things that you can manage. Here are some of the best practices. So remember, I mentioned some of the errors that some suppliers face. This may be based on a couple of these items here. So this is pretty basic, but I know some people use Internet Explorer still or other browsers. The recommendation is to use Google Chrome. This actually comes directly from Item 360. Found this in a help document when we were seeing a lot of our suppliers have issues with logging in and having a seamless experience on Item 360. Make sure that you're using Google Chrome when you're logging in and not another internet browser. Second here is just not every process is supported on Item 360. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but before you start, I would go ahead, if you have access to Item 360, go into the help documents, read through that, just type in, is this type of assortment, is e-delivery items supported in Item 360? And read through that. We have had suppliers who start a process thinking that they're supposed to set it up on Item 360 when it's actually a different process within Retail Link, depending on their category, depending on the way they ship, etc. So just make sure that you're not, building that out and, spinning your wheels on a spreadsheet to upload your item setup and realize that you should be in a different application. So the example here is with e-delivery items. Item 360 is not able to create a new item configuration of an existing item, e-delivery items. So that's just a quick example there. And then the third point here is to follow all the spreadsheet directions for valid upload. So an example here would be that a GTN starts with any number other than 0. It may be invalid. And if there are any directions on the spreadsheet. They are there to guide you, so that any upload process, there's no errors, that, you're making sure all the information is correct. And there are a couple others there that could probably be included, but I'm just kind of blanking on those. So if there's any good ideas that people have or examples, you can always share those in the chat too. All right, so we went through that pretty quickly, but I feel like there's probably a good amount of questions. So we'll kind of go into our Q&A portion. Melody, what do you got for me? Oh, you're muted.
How embarrassing. Okay.
We're having all types of tech issues today.
Of course. Okay, we have a lot of questions.
Great.
Okay, perfect. Do we need to item 360 setup old styles in item 360 if Walmart has a new order for another season?
Okay, that sounds like a seasonal item. So do we need to have item 360 setup old styles? So what I would say is and please jump in, Melody, if you're thinking something different. Let's say that we're going back to our Halloween bags and you've listed those products before. It's literally the same product. I would say you can republish that and it should be the very same. If anything is changing, I would go into item maintenance and I would update those. And then if it's a completely different SKU, so let's say it's still Halloween bags, but you've completely redesigned it. It needs a different UPC or GTIN, whatever the case may be. That's when I would do an item setup.
Yeah, I'm trying to look on the help desk right now for that to see if there's any additional resources. I haven't found some yet. So I will, if I do find something, I will send it to you guys. But that sounds like a good place to start for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
When doing a bulk content update, does this update the listings that are both on 1P and 3P, or are these different templates?
That is a great question. So the question is, it sounds like they have a new item on 1P and they want to move it to 3P as well. Is that correct? Or it updates, they're updating one listing?
It sounds like they have a listing that is both on the 1P and the 3P side, and they're wanting to know if they update it, and are there two different templates for that when doing a bulk product content update?
If they're different on the catalog, I would say it's different updating. Someone jump in and correct me if I'm wrong again. I don't want to say 100% on that, but if they're not listed in the same, I don't believe that they will sync up. I think it's like a 1-for-1. Unless there's again, there's about 100 attributes you can click. If it says, like can bulk upload for 1P, 3P, that's the only time I would think, but I don't think it's that simple.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So does GTIN equal sellable GTIN?
Yes. I kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier.
And your audio cut out, even though you're not muted. How weird. What is happening today?
Oh no, Zoom has it out for us
You're
today.
still muted. Oh no. Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I don't know why we're having so many technical difficulties. Can you try that again? You can hear her?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. If we get cut out, we always will follow up with some of the answers or pointing to you to helpful things in emails. So we do have, your names and emails, so we can always answer those later if Zoom just completely cuts out. But the question was, are GTINs equaling sellable GTINs? I would say yes. So a GTIN can be, usually when people are saying it, they mean the 14-digit number. It can be anywhere from like an 8 to a 14-digit number. And consumable GTINs are sellable GTINs. So maybe I need to build a flow chart for this, but essentially it's GTIN, and then there's consumable GTINs. Underneath that is going to be a GTIN 8, 12. 12 is going to be your UPC. 13 is going to be your UPC for European, so an EAN. And then 14 is going to be the barcode for shipping packs. All of those are consumable GTINs, and they're also sellable GTINs. So hopefully that clears things up. They're all kind of the same. They function in different ways, and they have different uses. I did share that help article too earlier.
Perfect. How do we know what styles have been set up already in item 360 and what styles are missing?
I would look in your catalog or use the attribute finder at the top. So I can kind of point to that again. I think I have one really. Yeah, you can use attribute finder up here. So look for whatever the key marker is for that style, or you can look in your catalog. That'd be my two places that I'd point to. If someone has a better suggestion, I'm all for it. But those are the two places I would point to.
Awesome. Where do we find the GTIN number for the styles we are setting up?
Well, that depends. If you're setting up the item, you need to register and you need to find your GTIN. You can actually get a GTIN. So if you need your company prefix, that's important. But for other things like new UPCs, you may need to reach out to your you need to contact your Walmart merchant for Walmart issued GTINs. And that I am very weirded out to say that, because usually you contact your buyer for not things like this, but that's actually what's listed in the item 360 help documents, is contact your buyer for Walmart issued GTINs. So to your question, Melody, I would say if you're setting up something, I would do the due diligence before to know what type of GTIN you need. And then, was there a second part of that question? I just want to make sure I'm capturing all of it.
So the question was, where do we find the GTIN number for the styles we're setting up?
Yes. So if you're setting up a new style, you'll need to know where you need to pull that. So is it a Walmart just issued GTIN? Are you setting up a completely new product? You'll need to pull that somewhere else. Again, it's kind of built on what you're setting up is where you'll need to pull that. So there's just kind of that extra step of, sure, you're going to set up an item, but make sure you know what questions you need to answer before you upload that. So you don't have 16 tabs open trying to figure out different things. So that'd be my answer.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Another question that we have is, do I need to do anything in item 360 to change an item from warehouse to drop ship? And I actually do have a resource that I can send out for this. You can change it, and there is a very helpful article on how to do that, from warehouse to DSV. So there's you can change the fulfillment. It's just a property.
Nice. Yep. Like I said, there's I think over 100 properties. So my suggestion there too is, try a couple different things, like build out a product, but then look at other things when you're building out products to see if there's different attributes that you should be including or that you're not familiar of that may just be helpful to note later on.
Perfect. Okay. So this question, I know that we talked about it a little bit beforehand. Just to give you a heads up, so should direct import items be set up on item 360 or through supplier quote? I have heard that item 360 may not be ready for DI.
Yes. Let me go back to that slide. I'm 99% sure that I answered this, but there's always a chance that I skimmed over it. I'm pretty sure with item 360, yeah, import shippers are not going to be, but I believe just import items you can. Am I incorrect there, Melanie? Or I would say for the most part, I've seen import still is on the workflow that is, they haven't moved over to item 360 is how I understand it.
And I'm actually not familiar with supplier quotes, so I
Yeah.
won't be able to give a lot of clarity around that, but that seems correct to me as well.
Okay.
Would you say it's better to send what you have, or should I wait until I can find all the attributes before submitting?
Find all your attributes. If there's one, and again, I would look into some of the help articles if there's ones that are optional or whatever. I would say you should have the correct information and you should have as much information as possible, because if something is left blank, it will not upload when it's a required field. And I will say there are some fields that are just not clear that they are required. So that would be my first suggestion is wait, or really be, while you're waiting to upload that, be asking the questions to different team members or your merchant team or whoever it needs to be on how you get that information.
Super helpful. Thank you. Okay. We have items in our catalog that do not belong to us. How is the best way that we can clean it up?
Okay. My first question would be, why are there items in your catalog that don't belong to you? Is that like, is there some kind of partnership? Like that'd be my first question on why those are there. That may be something with like an integration problem. I would contact item 360 and let them know, because that seems very odd why they would be in there. And I would not delete anything off of item 360 that you're not 100% sure that you should be deleting off of it.
Yeah, so Nicole said third-party sellers, and Mandy is saying Walmart purchasing from distributors. So I haven't come across that. So that's,
I haven't either.
we usually work with 1P. So
yeah.
I do think that we have a quote from Dee Dee talking about, oh, Nicole saying we have a huge issue with this. I'm sorry about that. I do think that we have a quote from Dee Dee talking about this exact issue in the last webinar that we did on this. So I will try to find that and see if we can send that to you guys, because she did kind of talk about that process. But in that recording, you should be able to see that as well, because I remember people talking about that. And from what I remember, she said that there's not a great way to clean that up, that it's actually pretty impossible to do that, but I may be misremembering. So let me try to find that for you guys and see if we can send it to you.
Yeah. And Melody, that particular event / we did a live stream with it. It was called Understanding Item 360. So that should be listed on, you can always search in the search bar on Supplier Wiki. This is a tip for everyone, just for different assets or different resources that we have in there. So sweet.
I think we have time for one more, and this one's from Jenna. So are we able to change or update the GTIN numbers for a Walmart item after the item details have been uploaded, or do we need to create a new item with the correct GTIN numbers? So I did look this one up. It was I looked it up on Walmart Supplier Support Group. So if you guys haven't seen that resource, please go and check that out. And Allie, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that you have more experience with item 360 than I do. But according to Megan on Walmart Supplier Support Group, she said that, Erin said that a new Walmart item number is required. So you will need to go and create a new item with the correct GTIN numbers. So that is what's being suggested since you're getting the new GTINs.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. If the GTIN is changing, we'll just kind of talk about a workflow here. the GTIN is changing and you can't edit it in item 360, then I would create a new item. If GTN is editable, and from what I've seen, it's not an editable feature. Once it's built, like that is the ID for that item. Then if it's anything but the GTIN, I think you can go in and edit it in the maintenance. But I would say what you said, Melody, is kind of where my mind is. Again, I've seen a lot of updates on item 360 recently. So as of today, I think that that's what it would be. But if the process changes, we'll let people know.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. If we weren't able to, I think I tried to get to everyone's questions, but if we weren't able to, we'll make sure we follow up afterwards. I appreciate everyone joining us here today. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know that Allie is working diligently on an item 360 201 deck. So I think some of these more complex questions that we maybe weren't able to fully answer, we'll have some answer for you guys in that next one. So please check that out. But thank you, everyone. These are actual emails. Please feel free to contact us. We'd be happy to get you set up or get you additional help if we weren't able to help you. And that is actually our website right there at the bottom, supplypack.com. Please check that out. And is that it? Is that our last slide deck?
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.